Cool. Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the regular Saturday afternoon quarantine lockdown piano lesson for beginners. One finger at a time, graduating to two until eventually you end up playing with 11 fingers, like a professional piano player. But it takes a bit, it takes a minute, and don't expect to be able to get the results without doing the work. And last week was work. Last week I had you playing all the major chords, going all the way up chromatically, and then in a cycle of fourths. Don't worry, I know that's really boring. I actually like that stuff. Most people don't. Most people just want to be able to play a tune. So that's the whole point, really, of the one finger at a time lessons. And so I'm going to do more of what I did 2 weeks ago, which seemed to be pretty popular with a lot of people, which is just showing you all some riffs and then playing them slowly, and you just got to copy them. And then when you learn them, you'll have a bunch of little riffs. The point of learning lots of little riffs is not just to play one riff over and over again. That would be boring for everybody. Ultimately, you've got to find a way of filling in the gaps between them, seeing how they're linked, and using them in a song. But it's actually kind of just a good exercise, like it is in learning a language conversationally, just to copy and learn simple expressions. Comment ça va? So that's what we're going to do. And we'll start in C, because all these lessons so far have been in C, because this, if you build up a certain amount of knowledge, and it's all in the same key, then there's a greater chance you'll be able to join it all together and start filling in the gaps. So, where shall we start? You can probably tell I don't never prepare for these. It's all kind of spontaneous. All right. Play, like we always do, play the note of C. Play the chord of C major. Play the next inversion. Play the next inversion. And now add a G at the top. So we're playing a C major chord in a different inversion. Remember, we'll have to do inversions. Same notes in different orders. And then we're adding a G. So it's like a C sandwich with G as the bread and these two notes as the filling. One of which is your ham and one is a little bit of your mustard. Because this is... Huh?
Move your mic back just a little bit.
And now get used to that. And now we're going to do this with these two fingers here at the end. We're going to go, and it's a stretch. We're going to go. See how I'm phrasing that E, sliding off the E flat, and then. If you need to move this finger, that's okay. This finger's not really doing anything yet. And when you're doing this, think about how you're phrasing it. Put some soul into it. You can do that quickly, or you can do it slowly. And you can slur it a little bit, make it sound a little bit drunk. Make it sound prim and proper. And now I go. I'll show you why, because I'm going to show you this. But I'm afraid I'll fall. I wanna holler, but the jaw's too small. Young man rhythm's got a hold on me too. I got the rockin'. flat, E. That's the whole riff. Start here. That's the first part. Play that again. Do it again. So you can go back and rewind it and play it again. So I won't stay on these too long because I want to give you a bunch of hip little riffs. Here's another similar one. Second half of it is the same, but the front half is different. And then you go. Okay, so practice those two riffs. And then, you know, the 1950s, 1960s, that style, New Orleans, Popeye kind of rhythm and blues, when they played what's called the 5 chord, in this case G, or the dominant chord. There's a G. And now we're going to mess with this chord and add some spices to it.
Can you, as a question, please call each note of the riff?
Each note of the riff?
Each note of the riff.
Okay, I'm going to do this, but you've got to start figuring these out by just looking and starting to remember. Because we know where C is. C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So G, E, C, and G. They're the names of the notes. And they go up to make C major. When we do that, we're playing F and A. That's F, E flat to E. The important thing is not to get too hung up on what the names of the notes are. Don't even worry about that yet. I'll tell you when they're important. What you've got to look at is the shapes. And familiarize yourself. And let your hands start to fall into these shapes. And you've got to start noticing that when you do that, what you're playing is two of the elements from a C major chord. There's C major. You're playing this note. And you're playing this note an octave higher. So it's a C major. And the point is here that there's all sorts of ways of playing the 3 notes that make up a major chord. And that's what I started out in a very early lesson, was showing you the first basic shape, which is C major, C, E, and G, and pointing out that you can rearrange these with this note on the top of the chord, which is the first inversion of the chord, and you can invert it again and play it like that. And that's how we started this lesson, by playing this inversion of C and adding a G on the top. So you're starting in C and you're ending in C, but this is what the C looks like that you're ending on, and this is what it looks like when you're starting. So, what is that? Well, that's a G chord. And what I'm showing you here with what I just did with C and what I'm doing here with G, is how you voice a chord. And once again, the chord's basic meat and potatoes are those 3 notes in that sequence. But you can vary the sequence with the inversion, position, first position, second position, third position, and then you can add and modify the notes if by so doing you create a pleasing effect. Sometimes some jazz piano players will modify a chord because it fits into a mathematical frame or shape and whatever, and it works, but I like to do it because I'm picking out the ones I want for a reason, because of the way they sound, not because of the way they fit a set of mathematical shapes. So shapes isn't everything. Anyway, G chord, dominant G, play a G, now raise this note here by a semitone. Semitone is half a note. That's a whole note. That's a half a note. Woo! A raised 5, or a sharpened 5, or an augmented 5. And as you'll notice, there's lots of variety in the language that's used in music. And there are often phrases that mean the same thing. And so in this instance, I've raised the note. You could say that I've sharpened the note, or you can say that I've augmented the note. In this instance, they all mean the same thing. It means I'm playing a G chord, and instead of a D, I'm playing a D sharp. Another name for that. Another same note could be called E flat if you wanted to. Alright, so now I'm going to add another note, this one here, and you might think that doesn't sound like a very pleasing chord. Well, it's because it's packed too tight and it's not played in the best of voicings here. You have this cluster of notes, which actually to my ears is quite pleasing, but I tend to, I'm listening with the ears of someone that's been experimenting with these things for half a century. What's appealing to me in some respects might not be appealing to someone who's getting started. What we need to do is unpack this chord and make it sound good. Well, in the context of a song, we're going to have a bass, in this case G, and I always make my basses an octave apart to make them sound bigger. Now, watch this. So this is a G chord. But you'll notice in my right hand I'm not even playing a G note. There is no G note in there. What I am playing is what's called a 9, which in this case is A, an augmented 5, which in this case is E flat, and then another A beneath it. And this chord goes by like this. And it comes after. So it's a 5 chord, a dominant chord.
It's also the beginning of what's that song? You pretty brown eyes.
Yeah. Yes, it's used a lot Alan Toussaint used it a lot. Huey Smith and Fess used it a little bit. Mac Rebennack, obviously, and James Booker utilized it. James Booker would stretch it out, Mac too, and make it into a big, beautiful chord. In a basic shape, it's kind of nice because it's got some sophistication, but it's kind of rude at the same time. Your pretty brown eyes and your wavy hair. Not a good key. You don't come home so much, baby, since you're not there. I got it bad, like I told you before. Well, I'm so in love with you. Leave me no more. Lipstick Traces. I get a high blood pressure when you're gone. So, I could go on at length about the background to this one, but as I said on this lesson, it's mainly just parrot fashion playing. So I will tell you what the things are, but I'm not going to go into great lengthy explanations, because today it's just simply a matter of just copying, just so that you start to develop a bit of a vocabulary. So, C. We played the same shape up here at the beginning of the lesson. It's the same chord, but an octave higher here and an octave lower here. C in the bass. So try this. So I'm just alternating with my left hand between C in an octave and G in an octave. And I'm pulling all these fingers out of the way so you can see it. Ordinarily my fingers would be out here. And your hand can get used to being in this position. For some people with small hands, it'll be a stretch. But everyone should be able to pretty much reach that, unless you're a child, perhaps, and then your hands haven't grown enough yet. But when you play that octave, you need to get used to your hand, feel where your hand is, and almost, you don't want to make your hand stiff. When I say lock it in position, it doesn't mean you have to stiffen up, but really you have to remember the shape of your hand, because once you do, then you know you can go anywhere up and down the keyboard, and when you put your fingers down, your pinky and your thumb will be the same distance apart. And that way, when you play them together, you'll always be hitting an octave, and it'll sound good. It won't sound like this or this. It's going to be like this. So here we go. So first of all, this C in the right hand, and now a full C with that inversion, the nice inversion there that we started the show with. Basic pattern, and get it so that it swings, so that there's rhythm there. So you're playing it like a drummer, and you've got to try and get it even. Don't hit it too hard, don't hit it too soft. So we're changing the groove up a little bit here. I wanna jump but I'm afraid I'll fall. And now we're going to add this chord. This is a very sophisticated chord. If I were to explain why it does what it does, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to show you what it is, and so you can play it. It's the first chord, C major, G augmented, 9. So that's a good color, and it's a very New Orleans piano typically New Orleans flavor for the piano, and you can use it on a bunch of Huey Smith tunes. I can't lose with the stuff I use. Don't you just know it? I get a high blood pressure when you call my name. I got the rockin' pneumonia and the boogie woogie flu. There's loads of them, and there's loads of Alan Toussaint and Chris Kenner tunes too. Well, that's something you got, baby. Make me work all day. It's something you got, baby, baby, bring home my baby. Alright, I don't expect you to be able to play that last bit, but I'm just showing it to you in the kind of context of where you would use it. Well, I can't lose. Hello, Josephine. How do you do? So there's lots of examples, but the important part is playing the riff. New Orleans songs, most R&B songs, most blues songs, most rock and roll tunes, most of them really only utilize 3 chords. C, in this instance, in the key of C, F, and G. Well, I'm sitting in la la waiting for my ya-ya. Sitting in la la waiting for my ya-ya. It may sound funny, but I don't believe she's coming home. There it is again. Yeah, baby, hurry. So if you go listen to old, and you go on Spotify or whatever and find old New Orleans R&B tunes, you'll find a lot of them. Chris Kenner, Lee Dorsey. Well, Lee Dorsey's stuff got really sophisticated when Alan Toussaint started really having fun with the arrangements. But this is some basic New Orleans R&B piano. Okay, here's a good riff, just riffs. C, G with your middle finger, B flat here, these two stay the same, it's an octave, C, G with your index finger in your left hand. Although, if you feel another finger's thumb is comfortable, use that. And what you're doing essentially is playing a C7th chord. And what makes this so appealing is that these notes don't move, and these 2 notes move the same amount. And with each move of a semitone or a half note, they're actually playing a different chord, each of which is really packed with information. But you're doing the most basic version, and you're going by really quickly. And so your brain, even if you're a non-musician, knows that each of these notes, each of these chords you're playing is actually very rich and sophisticated, but it's going by really, really quickly, and it's like getting having one mouthful of a really spicy chicken vindaloo or a beautifully baked sweet cake with all sorts of cinnamon and sugar and a lot of tastes, and you're getting them in one gulp. And if you were to allow those tastes to linger, you could actually, I'll demonstrate what they are just to give you a bit of background. So the first chord is a C major. So in our example here of going, I'll play the very first one, and I'm going to expand each one and give you a flavour over the whole keyboard of what they sound like and what they can be. So that's the first one. Here's the second one. That's that one. Here's the last one. This is the last one. It starts in C. And then ends in C. But in the blues, or in rhythm and blues, it goes by really quickly. So there it is. When you play this, there's our Huey Smith chord, the G chord, the dominant chord, the chord with the augmented 5 and the major 9. You don't need to know what they are, I'm just telling you so you start getting familiar with some of these words. It's a G chord that's been warped, reshaped, to the point where the right hand, it contains none of the original elements of G. This is a G chord, and we've ended up with this. But it's only because we've taken it one step at a time, we've slightly altered the chord, and then left other notes out to the point that it's almost unrecognizable. And by putting a G in the bottom of the chord, we still feel it as being a G. It's in the music terms they call it a dominant chord, because it does dominate until it resolves to the root or the tonic or the one. These are all different musical terms for the same thing, which in this instance is C, home. Now this chord in this context I'm playing is kind of rocking out and aggressive and fun and boisterous. If you play it gently in a blues context, it's beautifully poignant. So how you play it is very important, but these are all tools in the toolbox. There's a whole bunch of stuff there for you to work on, and I think that's it. So brief recap. The riff, or, and then the G chord, and then a groove, using the chords we've just learned. C, G, C, G, C, G, C, G. Like I say, wind it back, get to a bit, find a bit that you like but you can't quite play, stop it, and just try and figure it out. Use your ears, watch, remember the shapes, and do it over and over again. It's going to take ages, but hopefully it'll be fun, and you'll start getting little glimmers and glimpses of the nuts and bolts of how a groove and a New Orleans thing is put together. And you're on the way to be able to play it. Takes a minute, but it's fun. And practice as much as you like. The more you practice, the better you'll get.
That's how you get to Carnegie Hall.
That's how you get to Carnegie Hall. I stood outside Carnegie Hall. No, I actually went inside and saw McCoy Tyner once. He's quite a good piano player. At least he was. Thank you. See you next time. Happy weekend.